Oh crap! Hold on. I gotta pull up my thing. Hold on.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
Desktop. 'Cause I do a bad enough job of it when it's in front of me. No, get off of the other one. There we go. Okay. All right, I have it. Hello, and thanks for joining us here on Modern Metamorphoses, the podcast that takes a look at comics, prose, movies, TV shows, and other media involving the physical or mental alteration of its characters or metahuman themes. Striving to be insightful, respectful, and inclusive, this series discusses adult material at times, but is itself all access. Join us now as we look at how metamorphoses in media have evolved to the modern era. I am your co-host, Dan Standing, the transformation comics and prose and stories and terrible at his own introduction creator.
You're so close.
I know, and then I realized I did the name and the title and all that in the wrong order.
You're killing me, Smalls.
And the person who's far more professional at his introductory job is...
Oh, no pressure. I'm Alex Fort, fantasy fetish researcher and sexuality scholar.
See, that's way better. I don't know what I keep doing wrong.
You have a long thing to say before it, so you're just getting tongue twisted when you finally get to talking about you.
I do think there's a little moment where in my mind I just celebrate getting through this pre-written bit, and then I'm like, you've done the hard part already. We're just going to sit back on the... People know who you are.
Rest your feet up on the ottoman, spill your tea.
Mm-hmm, exactly. Like, okay, I'm done. Oh, wait, there's more. So,
crap, I gotta talk about me now.
the worst thing. So let's not talk about me. Let's talk about our the film that we watched.
Yeah.
Speaking of all access.
Yeah, I decided to take things away from grotesquely adult only or with adult themes and moved on to Disney's Sword in the Stone.
Yes. The Sword in the Stone, which, as we mentioned in our last episode, small words and titles are important.
Yeah.
Because I keep thinking and saying the sword and the stone, which is not only just simply incorrect to the way the story goes, but also a totally different movie.
And, it's not just a stone. It's, a big deal. Because I hadn't seen this movie since I was, 5. So, a quarter of a century ago... I watched this movie, and I completely forgot about 96% of it.
See, it'd been a little while since I had also watched it, but I remember as a kid we had it on VHS, and I watched it so much that actually when I was rewatching it, I was thinking to myself, oh, I thought there was more to this than I remembered, but no. Everything I remembered is pretty much there. It's just what I like to call one of this era of Disney animation's chapter movie, where it's here's a bit and then we fade out, and here's a bit and then we fade out, and here's a bit and then we fade out, and now it's been 80 some minutes and the credits and we're done.
That did not feel like 80 minutes at all.
I don't actually know how long it really is.
Well, I can tell you it is around 80 minutes.
Oh, okay.
It just doesn't feel like 80 minutes.
Oh, it's actually less than 80 minutes by 1 minute.
What is it?
It is 79 minutes.
Oh, dang, they got me on the Price is Right rules.
And, I actually thought it was 83 minutes, so...
Still lost.
It is
still lost.
I think it moves so quickly because of that nature of its narrative, where it doesn't have... It has an overarching theme, but it doesn't, it feels very disconnected in these little vignettes that are all connected by the fact that it's the characters.
It makes sense given the prospect of the story being let's teach Arthur about life. Mm-hmm. And so little anecdotes, little fables of here's another experience. But one, the experiences go very quick. I don't know how the boy learns anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I forgot it was a musical. I just spaced that fact. And then when the whole thing started and it opened up a picture book,
mm-hmm.
and a dude singing. I'm like, wait, what?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I didn't watch this quite as much as I watched Robin Hood, but it has a very similar theme to it in its build. Both because I think both of these are based on a collection of of stories that were all put together as a collected book, Sword in the Stone in particular, because it's based on the book by T.H. White.
Yeah, the Once and Future King.
I think it's even older than that. I think it's what the Once and Future King swallowed up inside of itself. Like I think it was a smaller book that then became part of an even bigger book.
Oh my.
But yeah, it's part of the reason it's kind of broken up the way it is in these. It is literally chapters, just like you would see in a film, or I'm sorry, in a novel. But
Yeah, it's a weird feel, and I feel like we feel like there's more to it because it's part of the Xerox era. So our mind literally snips different sections of things that look very similar and
mm-hmm.
plot wise that would go together. Because
Yes,
yeah, like they spend a significant percentage of the movie not being human, and then there's a whole bunch of movies around the era involving anthro characters.
yeah, and part of that is as you said, the Xerox era, and I know we mentioned it a little bit in the last episode, but for those who aren't familiar, classically with their animated films, early on, you'd get Disney animators who would draw out on paper and with pencil the initial, let's say, Snow White dancing. But each one of those frames or those individual moments on paper would then go to somebody who would ink them onto the clear cellophane, and then they would go get painted, and then they would be photographed as part of the filming process.
Yeah, that'd be your animated cell. Yeah.
Exactly. However, as technology marched on and budgets marched downward, the Disney company literally, this is true, literally went out and bought Xerox machines, and their animators then would take the pencil work. Somebody would kind of buff it up a little bit, but pretty much just Xerox it right onto clear plastic cellophane. Forgetting words for some of these things,
Mm-hmm.
and then someone would then paint that, and then that would become the animated cell, and that
And
is
usually like pretty flat too.
that's why you'll see two things in a lot of the movies that Disney put out around there. I think Sword in the Stone is the earlier of them in the '60s, where you see first, and this is really evident, I think, in 101 Dalmatians, where you see all these kind of little. It's a little rough. The drawing doesn't look as sharp in the lines
Yeah,
because you're
everything's
getting
really fuzzy.
yeah, you're getting all these little relics from that first paper drawn pencil stage that still came through on the Xerox when they put it to the cell. So that's one thing. But the other thing is that you start to see, and I think as you mentioned, this is why a lot of the films around this era have a lot of anthropomorphic aspects to them. And I think Sword in the Stone predates the most glaring of them,
Mm-hmm.
but you'll see a lot of sequences reused, like Baloo dances the same way that Little John dances between Jungle Book and Robin Hood, and I think the Aristocats also has a scene that's reused from something else. Like they would basically just go back, find their old drawings, and be like, "Oh, okay, well we've done a dance scene before. We'll just we'll transform these characters from who they were in that movie
Yeah,
to
why
who we need
animate
in
it
this one."
again?
Yeah, because that's time is money. So that's what this era comes from. But I do think it's on the beginning part of it, so you don't see as much of it in this as you do see in like Robin Hood and Aristocats
I
and
spotted it in this one a few times
oh yeah.
because like you can see moments where it's literally like they just changed the background and the animations are the same. Like at
Okay.
one point, in the beginning, Arthur runs into the woods, and then like, what's his name, Cade, like runs
K
after him.
Sir K.
Yeah,
Well,
Cade like
he's not
jumps
Sir
and
yet then.
he like trips over a log and keeps stumbling forward, and then later at the tournament, Arthur runs off, and then Cade like trips over like a jousting lance in the exact same way. Arthur falls down the stairs with dishes like 3 times in the exact same way.
I do feel like I saw some stuff with the wolf also reused.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if you pay attention, you can see that like this movie is a lot of reusable little animations that they've just changed the colors or the lighting of, and it's kind of staggering, but it also it's I know why they did it. It's not like, this is a Flash animation from, Newgrounds in
Mm-hmm.
1998. This is a big
Yeah.
company that's just cutting corners.
Yeah, and I would say, even though we do have some of that reused animation, we do see though where they put in the money. They put in the money because we have got a lot of different transformations in this film, done in a variety of different ways between
Hmm.
actual animation and the change of the body shape and the details to crossfade changes. So,
Yeah. They employed a lot of like animation tricks, which is great
mhm,
to accomplish a lot of transformation, which is why we're here.
yes. To frame the parts of the transformation, I think we can give the roughest of details here on the plot of The Sword in the Stone. Is of course it is an adaptation of the Arthur myth. We could begin with, of course, the legend of the sword in the stone, and you mentioned earlier about the stone being important. This is the first time where I do recall looking and being like, oh, it's a stone like an anvil kind of stone. Uh,
Yeah,
it
it's like an anvil on top of a specific rock.
Yeah. In the past, I've always just felt like the important part of the sword and the stone is the sword, and it can be in whatever the hell stone it
Right.
means. Like it doesn't like the stone is simply a method of testing, not necessarily important itself. But the stone in this is actually weirdly artistic. But anyway, there's a sword and a stone. It's going to determine who's the rightful king of England. People kind of forget about it for a little while, and
Yeah, like they lose it. Like the sword comes down, right, and says, whoever pulls this out gets to be king of England. And, like it's ordained by God, and everyone's like, oh well, we can't get a new king until someone can pull this out. And apparently, the whole land falls into chaos without the monarchy, which is hilarious to me.
I feel like also this whole idea of them like they kind of know about the sword and the stone, like it's something where when they come back to it at the end of the movie, they're like, "Oh yeah, that thing." But
Yeah,
but I feel like for an era, and I don't really know when Sword in the Stone is supposed to take place in real time, but I feel like for we as human beings have fought wars and killed each other over like the tiniest of spellings of a word in a sentence in a book. Like the fact that there isn't like an entire religious order that has cropped up to like worship this literal cross in a stone that's come down from God, like constantly reminding everybody, hey, proof of God right here. Like the fact
yeah.
that that hasn't popped up in the meantime in this story does kind of like make me go, I think somebody took some plot, jumped some things in the plot to just tell the story. But
Yeah, I looked this up by the way just now because I was really curious.
mm,
It's apparently between the 5th and 6th centuries.
I'm sure there was some sort of terrible religious war going on, and I don't remember which one it was.
If it's what I believe it is, it's when the Saxons were like coming to town
Oh, okay.
because like this is the era of England getting attacked by like 9 different nations, from like the Romans to the Vikings to the Saxons to
That's right. That's right. That's right. Um, so yeah, I can't imagine that there isn't somebody who's constantly reminding them. We just need just one more person try, please. We've got all these other people knocking on our door. We'd really like to get this
yeah,
sorted out.
things
But
are a little busy.
yeah. Anyway, so we meet Arthur, who is called Wart in this. I think he's actually called Wart in the tales in general, but he's mostly known as Wart in this film. He
Yeah.
is like the squire and kind of the description on Wikipedia calls him his because him and Kay foster brothers. I don't know how much I really agree with that given everything that's going on. They're more of housemates,
Yeah,
but
they're yeah, if they're siblings, it's very tenuous.
yeah. So they Kay's kind of a jerk, and in the process of going out and practicing with Wart, an arrow gets let loose into the deepest parts of the forest, and Wart goes to go get it because Kay's a butthead. Um, in the meantime, we then meet Merlin, the wizard Merlin, who I enjoy how they portray Merlin in here because Merlin famously ages backwards. And because of that, the literal version of that is that he was born sometime in the far future and is shifting backwards in the timeline. And
Oh,
so he knows about things in the future because he was there and experienced them, but he's also, forgetful and he's an old man still at this point, so he's forgetful and doesn't remember things exactly. So he like talks about, he's a little bit like the genie in Aladdin, where he talks about things that characters of this time period could not possibly know. But in this case, there's a narrative explanation just from the nature of how Merlin metaphysically functions.
see, I thought it was just a cheeky little thing of like them trying to be like, television. That's funny.
He may imply more so than anything else that he's used spells to see the future, but
Yeah.
classically, and how I interpret it when I watch it, it is because he has literally experienced the future already and is just now caught backwards in time to this point.
Yeah, I always thought it was kind of interesting that like such a powerful and like notorious wizard is also kind of a doofus.
I think it helps the narrative. Like, it's the reason why Merlin doesn't solve every problem, because he's, as you say, kind of a doofus, but also like he's got a very fragile ego. But instead of like, he's not an evil wizard, so instead of like, oh, I'm gonna turn you into a newt, that's like, well, I'm just gonna go sulk over here, and I'm not gonna help you solve your problems with magic.
I would turn you into a newt if I could remember how. Yeah, he is very broody.
Yes, and he lives with his owl, who is named. Hold on, I've forgotten.
Archimedes.
Archimedes, yes, his owl Archimedes, and who is very much anthropomorphic and is capable of speech.
Yeah, it's a very animated. Like it looks like an eagle owl, but it's very small.
But I would say it's his scale also switches up depending upon the needs of the plot. Also,
Yeah, just a simple horned owl with a bad attitude.
so to kind of condense a little bit of what is kind of a meandering plot. Like, they take a little while to get to really what's going on. Basically, Merlin knows that Arthur is important. He doesn't quite know why, but he
It takes the whole
knows.
movie to get to the stone.
So he decides that he's going to become Arthur's teacher, presumably so that he can teach him to be a good person, so that when he becomes king, even though Merlin doesn't remember that's what he's going to do, he knows he needs to train Arthur in regards to being a wise person, so that when he becomes king, he'll remember all these life lessons and apply those to his kingship. And given that the experience that he has, where it's like tiny creatures are scrappy and survive, by their wit in a world that's trying to kill them, things like that. They're not bad life lessons to have. They're just,
I guess I missed. I didn't miss. I always assumed that there's a scene in the movie where they turn into birds and like look down and see that there are no actual borders, but that didn't happen in this movie.
I don't, yeah, I don't remember him doing that. I think you're
Like that's
confusing it.
absolutely a thing that happened in the true story, but not in this one.
No, they don't quite adapt that. I don't think they didn't quite cop on that one song.
I can see why in the '60s American media would have ignored that message,
Yeah, we were very much about borders in 1963.
especially South American borders.
We liked them. I don't know how much we really honored them, but we liked them.
Yeah, we certainly encroached.
To focus on the subject of our transformation podcast.
Yes, right.
So we have basically three tales, three segments when once Merlin moves into the castle and starts training Wart. And the first one is the fish one, right?
I think so. Yes.
Yes. So in our first tale of morality training, I guess,
Yeah. Yeah, that's what it would be.
Merlin turns himself and Arthur into fish to swim about in the moat.
The most generic of fish that cannot be categorized. Like I would argue they look like Dr. Seuss fish. Like it's like that's a trout. No, I have no idea what these boys are.
I think they probably could just be best summed up as redfish, bluefish. Like,
Yeah, that's what they look like with
and
eyebrows.
with eyebrows. And does he have a beard or like a a
He
little?
has like a little like soul patch flavor saver kind of deal.
Okay, like all fish.
Yeah, you know.
Yeah. no furry salmon tails here. So the transformations, I think, for this one is actually pretty good. It's we get later on when he does the bird, it's pretty much a crossfade, but this one's actually, if I recall, his body kind of shifting around to become the fish.
Yeah. It's like I think it's like a top to bottom endeavor with sparkles.
Mm-hmm. And of course, Merlin, being as wise as he is, decides he's going to do this on land.
Yeah.
Even though they can talk on land, they can't breathe on land. So he quickly has to collect Arthur and get him into the water.
Yeah, I think it's funny because Arthur's like, I'm a fish, and he's like flapping around, and Merlin's like, Shh, stop moving.
Yeah, like it's weird because there's this middle ground that they play where it's like he instinctively knows some things in the animal forms that Arthur gets here and there, but other things he 100% has to learn. Like he kind of has to learn how to swim, even though he kind of swims just fine and flops around instinctively, even though someone's trying to help him. Like it's this weird thing where like a storyteller doesn't quite know how much animal to impose on a character transformed versus being like, I don't know how to do anything, and like the difficulties of actually like having someone learn totally from scratch how to use an entirely alien form.
Yeah, I guess I always just followed like the D&D rules, where like if you did polymorph, you intuitively understand the body you're in.
And there's this it's just such a strange middle ground that they take here where it's like, okay, so here's your fin. It's almost like Finding Nemo a little bit when he's
Yeah,
like,
I was thinking the little fin.
mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And this is a pretty straightforward like danger tale where they swim around for a little while and you get to the moral part of this where it's like, even the smartest person necessarily can't beat the bigger is it a barracuda? No, it's a
No,
gar.
it's a gar. It's the most terrifying gar in existence.
Mm-hmm. That then tries to eat them, and it's a pretty intense scene.
Yeah, it always gets me because like it stands out so intensely of just like, oh look, it's him having a good time. There's like this frog being like not necessarily like normal frogs, but it's like being very playful, and then suddenly just like a semi, this thing just starts zooming in. Almost looks like a star destroyer with eyes, just like slowly approaching the camera.
I agree. It is. They did a magnificent job of making this thing completely foreboding. Like you can tell, and I think that's important because, as you said, the frog is being weirdly playful. Like we've clearly established a frog who is a little bit more anthropomorphized than a frog of its natural state would be. So there had to be a clear indication that this is not a gar that you're going to be able to reason with. Like there's no fun dancing around with this particular fish. It is going to kill you.
It's a pike.
It's a pike.
It's a pike. It's like, are gar even in Britain? It's a pike.
Okay. I have no idea if
I
gar...
love saving us from the comment section. I don't know if we have an active comment section, but I don't want people going, that's not what a gar looks like.
I mean, I'd take an that's not what a gar looks like comment, honestly, on something. Please, people.
Yeah, it's a
You
pike.
don't need to give us a 5-star, but at least put something somewhere on our podcast feeds.
Tell me that you listen.
Even if, as I say, like, even if they're booing, at least it means they're listening. So,
Yep.
but, so
Yeah.
there's this big escape sequence, and the owl gets involved in rescuing poor fishy Arthur, and Merlin gets trapped and can't help them, of course, because, we have to have a plot, and ultimately they get zapped back to human form.
Yeah. I feel like it's all rather anticlimax because it's like he tries using his wits to outsmart a fish, a literal fish, but like he doesn't really. Like this is like a really smart fish. This pike gets traps and stuff, which like I'd be absolutely devastated.
I think, I don't want to not give Arthur some credit. There are certainly things that he does that extend his life for a few moments
But like
to,
this fish bites
but
down on an arrowhead and snaps the arrow shaft, not getting
mm,
impaled through the head. Like this thing is not a normal fish. I bet you Merlin transformed this into another thing, and just like, really, buddy. My cat found some paper.
oh,
If you're wondering what that noise is, yeah,
I'm sure it's adorable.
it's. Can you hear it?
Oh yes, oh clearly.
Oh, yeah. I'm gonna put this box out in the hallway real quick, and I'll get back to how this fish is not a normal fish.
Okay. Yeah, to just continue to support the fish is not a normal fish aspect. Normally, because I wouldn't excuse to keep this in the episode. The animation is also done very,
good audio.
very, very differently in regards to the human transformed fish, which are very, almost like think of a diamond from a deck of cards or a spade. They're shaped a little bit like that, while the pike is sort of the Jafar of the fish world. Very long, very angular, and a very different sort of art style to the other hero fish. Are you back?
Yeah.
Okay, I was just describing the art difference between hero fish being kind of rounded and stuff, and the pike
And
being
simple.
the Jafar of fishes.
Yeah,
And
that thing is literally menacing.
and I wouldn't put it beyond Merlin to basically be artificially engineering. He's a manipulative character. We see him with Sir Ector here and there. He knows how to manipulate his way into getting what he wants. So
I'm still thinking the fact that like he maybe like transformed like a knight into a big fish and just left him in the moat, which is why we find the suit of armor in there. And then, it comes down there and like that pike is like, I know that man.
I know who you are.
Kill them, both of them. Like
I
he
mean,
forgot how to talk. Only vengeance.
I mean, as far as we know, Merlin could just be transforming anybody who annoys him at the castle into, denizens of the moat.
Exactly.
Like, I wouldn't put it past him. But
That's what I feel like is happening. 'Cause that fish is smart and invulnerable.
it'd be in a much darker Disney film right now with that that underlying plot idea. But so, I mean, there's not much more to what's going on here. The whole segment is really, again, just to kind of teach Wart a lesson. Do you think there's anything else in regards to the transformation aspect? I mean, we have our cause. It's always going to be Merlin, pretty much, in this film.
Yeah,
The process,
it's gonna be magic.
yeah, the cause is magic. The process in this one is a little bit of animation transition between one form to another.
It's an interesting like 4 seconds.
Yeah. And the impact is he didn't get eaten and learned a life lesson.
Yeah, I'm not sure what that lesson is, but he seemed better for it.
Yeah. It's a kid. He just, he's immortal. He just knows, like, oh, I had a good time. I was a fish. Okay.
Whoa, you wouldn't believe that fish in there. I actually can. Yeah.
Yeah, there's some bad stuff in that moat. It's why it's called a moat.
Turns out I really need to stop turning us into prey animals.
A lesson he does not learn for our
Nope.
next segment, which is, again, generic brown bird for Wart. Oh, no, it's squirrel next.
Yeah,
right?
it's like
Yes.
it's
I
the one
skipped
bit I remembered.
I think it's between this and Robin Hood. I think it is what turned a lot of people onto a entirely different type of character to be interested in.
Yeah, the only thing I really remembered, it wasn't just like, man, that squirrel is really feminine. I remembered more that like Arthur couldn't communicate with her like, hey, this isn't gonna work because I'm a human male boy and you're a squirrel. And like her being like really devastated. That's all I remembered because like that left an impact on my toddler brain of like, that hurt.
Yeah, I would say similarly when I was watching the movie, the scene that we'll just spoil here. He doesn't have an ongoing relationship with the squirrel. He breaks it off. That scene though, when she realizes that he's human and there's no way they can be together, and she walks off, is a devastating scene, honestly. And even Merlin, for all of his sarcastic wiseassery up until now, is like, oh yeah, love's powerful. It can hurt when it doesn't go the way you wanted it to. And I'm like, oh, Okay. I guess we can guess the life lesson of this one. It's not gravity, that's for sure.
You know, when I was watching this, I was watching with Jinx, and Jinx made a very good point, and that is this whole scene, the whole premise is like, let's, explore and frolic the woods as this body and kind of learn your limitations of like when to jump and all that. And it quickly transforms into what could have been a conversation about consent.
Mm-hmm.
And if Merlin had had a better conversation about consent, then Mordred wouldn't have happened.
A
And
valid point there.
yet, if you remember anything past when like Arthur was king, anybody who isn't familiar with Arthur in legend, Mordred is like his half son that kills him.
Yeah, because Arthur can't keep it in his pants.
Yeah,
So,
because Arthur never really learned consent from Merlin when it mattered.
yeah, and this is certainly the case. We'll, let's rewind a little bit though.
Yeah,
I don't believe we see their transformation in this, right? They just kind of
no,
come out as stage
we
left
we fade
squirrels.
in and they're jumping through trees.
Yeah, we get our little bit of like excuse from Merlin where it's like, "Oh, you wanted to know about gravity. Well, here's the way we're going to learn about gravity." And I'm like, "I'm pretty sure this is your weakest excuse for a transformation, Merlin." Like, come on.
Yeah, I mean Galileo did a lot of that gravity work, but this was also 1,000 years later.
Mm-hmm. Regardless, they're squirrels. Warts being what every kid would do as a squirrel, just jumping all over the place. Tree branches are breaking. There's a wolf trying to eat him.
Yeah,
You
the
know,
same wolf that was chasing him through the woods. This one desperate, scraggly, just mess of a wolf.
he honestly gives me Wile E. Coyote vibes here and there.
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely. Now that you mention it, that we're only missing a bunch of silly contraptions.
yeah, like get a few Acme, orders away from absolutely being a Roadrunner cartoon. It actually,
Merlin paints a tunnel on a
mhm.
wall, runs through it.
It's funny because as I'm thinking about it, there were rules for how they would do the Roadrunner cartoons that
Yeah,
supposedly Chuck Jones came up with.
there are like 9 rules of,
Hmm.
engagement.
And one of them was something like the coyote or wolf in this case, the most damage done to it has to be like self-inflicted and almost all the time more damage to the ego than the actual body.
Yeah,
And that's definitely the case here. Like almost everything that happens to this wolf is through happenstance and not an actual direct attack on him.
yeah. I want to believe that the wolf is symbolic instead of just kind of funny. At least an attempt to like make kids laugh because he just can't eat this boy.
He tries so hard.
Like he just like keeps like he's like this like Sisyphus.
There you
I
go.
got it. Like Sisyphus, he is burdened to climb this hill only to find his target his left.
Or turned around and gone back the other direction, leaving him panting at the top of it. Yeah.
Or to turn into a squirrel and knock huge tree branches down on his face.
This poor wolf.
Yeah.
But the meat and potatoes of this sequence, as we've alluded to, not so subtly so far, is that in the midst of all of this, Wart encounters a sexy mauve squirrel. Like,
Yeah, some kind of off red. Not
yeah.
super sexy. I actually made a note that like this squirrel is not like as Jessica Rabbit as everyone believes she is. The squirrel is barely feminine. The eyes more so than like the puffed chest.
I was definitely going to say that the bedroom eyes on the squirrel are the most feminine aspect to it, but I do believe it is also slightly bustier than your average tree
Yeah,
squirrel is.
just like nowadays we just kind of see very like slim waist, like more fur in the chest area, and like the eyes are and the head are always a different shape, like sleeker,
Mm.
as you see in a lot of animation styles now. It's like, how do we tell people that this dog is a girl dog?
And yeah, this is a little more subtle, but
Yeah, the coding isn't as strong.
no, but it doesn't matter because we're immediately told anyway. Oh, it's a girl squirrel. Like
Yeah,
Merlin's all
especially the
over
voice. Yeah,
mansplaining how this squirrel functions. Yeah, then and particularly the voice, and she becomes immediately smitten with Squirrel Wart, and Merlin's like, oh, they choose their mate for life.
which
Like
is not true.
that also not true, but not a lot of like at this point, Merlin fails on a variety of levels. The first one being like, "You're on your own, boy," and I'm like, "This squirrel is down." Like,
Yeah, this squirrel's literally throwing down, but mostly through mimicry, which is
hmm
funny, but also like makes no sense.
yeah, because you would presume that there's a squirrel like process to this that she should be,
It usually involves their
following.
tails going crazy at each other, and then
Yeah.
they run around a tree a little bit, and then they have sex.
Yes. Thankfully, that doesn't happen because I don't want to think about seeing how
Yeah.
Disney would have animated such a thing. But
It's Rule 34. It's somewhere we can find that if we really wanted.
oh yeah, no, I mean I know it exists, and if that's your thing, that's great. Just go enjoy that. I'm not judging you for it. I'm just saying that I'm glad that the G-rated Disney film didn't go that route. DeviantArt the hell out of that. I mean, do it.
I'm just imagining theaters in the 60s as they watch like these two cartoon squirrels just go to town.
Well, see, what we didn't realize is that there's the version that went out to the regular theaters, but then there's the version that was the second half of the double feature with See You Next Wednesday at Piccadilly Circle, where Disney was really, really looking for that extra ticket sales from the
Oh,
specialty clients.
that's a good
But
callback.
thank you. I'm very proud of myself. Again, helps that although readers or listeners might be like, that was like 8 episodes ago or whatever, I just edited that like 3 days ago. So the where American Werewolf in London episode is much more fresh in my mind than I should probably be admitting. But
That's what
any
happens when you do your job.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So speaking of doing their job, Merlin buggers off, not doing his job of like helping Wart
Yeah.
navigate a really, really uncomfortable circumstance to be in because this squirrel has no boundaries.
At all. Like, because squirrels, I think the better lesson that could have been taught by this is like a more meaningful understanding of like biological essentialism, where
Mm,
it's like, you know, we can argue squirrels will be squirrels because squirrels may have a code of morality, but is their own, right? It's not bound by human morality, and so you can't use human measures on a different species. It doesn't quite, it's not congruent. And so like that's a good lesson to learn. And like that's another thing is like squirrels will be squirrels, but you can't say boys will be boys because that's actually like really problematic.
mm-hmm.
But this is the 60s and they don't really care. They're just like squirrels will be squirrels, and so you're literally powerless to the advances of this squirrel. Figure it out by I'm gonna go be lazy as a squirrel old man. What?
Which is kind of interesting because we do see that Merlin can talk the talk, but he can't walk the walk because not much longer into this sequence he encounters his own female interest.
Yeah. And it's like that stereotypical kind of like how do you say like middle-aged like homely woman stereotype that like, kept popping up in cartoons of like look at how unattractive she is kind of thing, but like it's in squirrel form.
Yeah, it's a really toxic and uncomfortable depiction of this older quote unquote squirrel.
Yeah,
I'm
like this
guessing.
it's like this trope that I've learned to absolutely despise.
Yeah, it's really uncool is such a like low branch of how that's
No,
this
toxic's a good word for it
yeah, I'm gonna go back to
because yeah,
toxic.
like that it covers all the spectrum of like what's wrong with well, the stereotype of like unconventionally attractive women will be like they have to look like this, sound like this, and have like fruitless advances on
hmm
like your protagonist who apparently is better than that.
And the joke on Wart is he has this, and I mean I'm again using joke quote unquote. And the joke on Wart is that he has this amorous individual all over him, won't take no for an answer, and at least it's on the male character to deal with the advances of the female character. That's kind of the joke they're going for. Not a great one,
Yeah,
but
and he's
compared
not doing
to
a good
the
job, and like the
no,
lesson learned is not very good.
no, but compared to the fact that with this other coupling of formerly human squirrel with female squirrel, the joke, she is the joke. Like that is what
Yeah,
that aspect of it is she is the joke, and that's just wrong. It's just inappropriate. And
yeah, her advances are a joke.
so to be honest with you, we even see both of these characters take their I think the second female squirrel also like does her part to try and like because the wolf intervenes at this point. Wart, in his attempts to get away from his interested squirrel, almost gets eaten. The squirrel helps save him. There's a little bit of back and forth, and ultimately, and I'll grant this, it's not like Wart is trying to communicate with the squirrel and be like, no, I'm not interested. I'm not interested. Like, he's trying. He's at least trying to communicate, and there is a communication barrier because, as many of the other instincts that they may have, there doesn't seem to be any cross-special communication capable.
Yeah, not even body language appears to be doing anything.
Yeah, so don't granted, he's clearly disinterested in her, and the moral that you would want to see of this is a character going, "Oh, okay, I can sense that even though we can't communicate, you're clearly pushing me away and uninterested, and I should respect that." But we don't get that. But we
Or
do
even
see
like Arthur adapting his language to her language as opposed to just sticking with his own.
that's true. He doesn't really mix up his um, way of getting his point across. Like he just keeps trying
Yeah.
the same thing over and over and over and over again.
Do you think a good leader would be able to have an adaptive communication style? But what do I know?
I mean, in theory, he's also dealing with something that a biological imperative that he has, in theory, no concept of.
Oh, that's
So
fair.
he's
Yeah.
not he's not working with a knowledge of even what it is she's really trying to do. He's still in the like at best romance is icky like
Girls have
aspect of,
cooties.
yeah, like at best that is the knowledge that he's working with. So Merlin has truly abandoned him, not just from the inability to communicate with this other person, but to even understand the basic interests that they have in their relationship.
Yeah.
Anyway, to make a very long story short, these two poor squirrel ladies have their hearts broken because Merlin just becomes the most toxic, like, Madame, I'm an old goat, and there's no way you could love me, blah, 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 blah. I'm just gonna turn into a big old mean wizard and scare
I'm
the
not
heck
even
out of you.
remotely interested. Blah blah
Yes.
blah.
And don't get me wrong, it's gonna sound weird to say, but if both of those squirrels ended up becoming their human equivalents with the proper amount of worldliness and knowledge to them, both of them, I would say, I would be like, oh, okay, let's talk a little bit, see where this goes.
Yeah.
Um,
You would give those squirrels a chance if they were human.
yes, if they were their equivalency in species and mind, I would be like, hey,
Yeah.
let's figure this out. Because don't
You
get
can
me
be
wrong,
real pretty, but if you got the brain of a squirrel, like literal mental capacity of a squirrel, I don't think it's gonna work.
yeah, I don't. What that the squirrels have what at most like a 5 to 10 year like lifespan. So I know that if we're just doing a quick copy paste here from squirrel to human, there's a whole lot more problems that got to be dealt with before any more conversation happens.
I
But
think there's gonna be an existential crisis, if nothing else.
yeah, that's true.
Also,
But
being
anyway,
incredibly impressed by my $5 bag of pistachios.
regardless, Merlin's a kind of total grump and kind of toxic about it, and Wart at least is like, I'm so sorry. Like, I don't know how else to tell you this. So he becomes human, and she is, specious and aghast, and is like, oh,
Broken. She's
yes.
heartbroken.
Yeah, and it's a really, like, granted, this is a person who clearly had no understanding of boundaries, but she's also a squirrel, and as you said, totally working on a completely different moral imperative, or morality and imperative. But again, you feel really bad that this has happened because in theory she's pledged her lifetime, romance to someone that she cannot have and
Yeah,
cannot be with her to no fault of her own way of knowing that.
exactly. It's like it's also not really Arthur's fault that he's not a squirrel.
So anyway, that's that sequence in its total weirdness and in its own
Yeah, it's
narrative.
bizarre.
Again, though, if you are all about, if you got something from that scene that you've taken into adulthood and have captured in any particular fashion in the art world, good on you. That's fine.
Yeah, but like if you're trying to think of it like what the story is about, like trying to teach Arthur how to be a good king, we're really not catching the moral lessons.
Oh, yeah, no, for Arthur, it's a total wash. Like,
Yeah, this movie just does not do a good job of capturing the wonderful wisdom of Merlin.
which, again, when was Sword in the Stone written? I'm curious.
Oh, the 12th century.
No, no, I mean T.H. White's version.
Oh,
38. Published in 38. So let's also remember that the most, published in 38, adapted in 63, we're not really going to get, like, any of the social lessons that we really want this film to be
yeah,
teaching.
yeah.
We can just consider ourselves lost on that matter
I
right
mean,
now.
to be fair, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory did a better job.
I do love Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory so much.
Yeah, and
And
like that's roughly the similar sort of time frame of whatever the dude who wrote that book, Roald Dahl.
yes, Roald
Yeah,
Dahl
yeah.
wrote Willy Wonka and the
And
Chocolate Factory. Well,
whenever that
Charlie and the
was.
Chocolate. Before we get comments in the comment section, he wrote Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, which is a fair enough book. The movie adaptation that is worth watching is Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, and it's amazing. And before we get even more comments in the comment section, yes, the Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory film has its good points and certainly is watchable. Have I backtracked enough of my statements yet?
All right, so yeah, Roald Dahl published it in 1964, and that movie came out in 71. That's a really quick turnaround. I could have
Well,
swore that book was older.
I didn't think it was 30s old, but it is older. It is not as old as I thought it was.
Yeah,
But better way,
that book came out when this movie came out.
oh wow, if anybody hasn't watched Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory for a little while, I rewatched it a couple months ago, and I forget just how long it takes to get to the factory, but how funny that opening like portion of the film is before they get to the
Yeah,
factory. Like
I
it's
cannot recommend enough watching that movie start to finish, and then watching like a making of documentary.
I haven't watched any making of documentaries,
Oh, you're
but
gonna love it to death.
as far as like a commentary, especially right now, like as far as a commentary on like the absurdities of capitalism and what people will do to get the things that they want, the first I want to say it's like the first 30 minutes of Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory is so fantastically realized. And I do feel like anybody who was too young when they were watching it is probably like going, when do we? I just want to fast forward to the Chocolate Factory. Like I just want to get to. I don't care about the golden tickets, but
Can we just like ignore Charlie's mom's song and absolutely just hate Grandpa Joe for being a shitty human being?
first of all, I 100% agree that "Good Luck Charlie" or whatever that song is one of those songs that is in like every musical from that era where it's like we could have cut it. I mean, it's pretty, but we could have just put it on the soundtrack. Like we don't. It slows the movie down so much. I have the same comment about there's a song in the middle of 1776, which captures the horrors of the Revolutionary War just fine. But I'm also like, oh my god, you've slowed the movie down so far with this sad ballad. Can we please move on? And I'm not going to take that back. You can comment all you want in the comment section. Grandpa Joe is, I mean, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory could certainly have its own episode that we could come to.
I mean, it technically
Future.
counts.
Yeah, I mean, there definitely has what we would need to qualify for this podcast. Grandpa Joe's, you know what, as a can of worms that we've already delved too far away from. He's probably taken the moral lessons of Merlin. Let's say that.
No, he's worse than that. I hate Grandpa Joe. Now that I'm an adult, I hate that guy.
All right.
And you can comment all you want. You can't change my mind. This is a hill I'm willing to die on.
Okay. I don't have anything to actively disagree any of those points on you, but I was basically stalling so that by the time we ever did that episode, I've actually come up with some sort of counter argument. But
You can't.
nah, I don't have one.
We've digressed. Plenty.
We have. We
The
have one
premise
more.
is that we're getting bad moral lessons from a movie from the 60s.
Yeah, don't get too many morality lessons from the '60s, just in general.
Or
I think
story
is the
writing
rule.
tips.
I mean, yeah, I don't have a direct argument on that one either. We have our final sequence
Yes.
of this in regards to its transformations, and it is a doozy. I would say it's got more transformation in it than the rest of the film combined.
Yeah.
It is
Do they ever turn into birds at one point?
that is this sequence.
Is it this?
Yeah, because it just butts right into Mad Madam Mim.
Okay, yep, that explains that. Yep,
Yeah,
that's the
it's
pacing
all
of this movie. Is I thought those were two separate occasions, and they are yet the same occasion.
as far as official fade out to black and then fade back in. No, it is certainly the same thing. But as thematically of like what's going on, yeah, it is totally narratively two different sections that just simply, unlike the rest of this movie, have a narrative connection. Bringing them from one to the other.
Yeah, something about a stone.
Yeah, well, we'll get to that eventually. Basically, this is our crossfade transformation, but also sort of a, be careful what you wish for sort of moment as well, as far as cause is concerned. Because Wart is looking out over the castle and idly wishing something about being able to fly, and Merlin basically sneaks up onto him. And again, Merlin, consent. For God's sakes. This is a person's body you're screwing with. Get consent. Transforms Wart into a little sparrow-like bird.
Yeah. Nondescript cartoon bird.
Yeah. This is actually this portion is actually the first time, though, after this sort of transformation. Again, because, Merlin didn't get consent beforehand and didn't think of a total, lesson plan to justify it. This is the first time it's not Merlin that goes out with Wart to do the lesson, but his owl is the one that goes with him.
Yeah, Archimedes knows more about flying than Merlin ever will.
Functionally, certainly, although I love that Merlin grabs a toy plane and tries to show that he knows about flying, and of course it gets caught in his beard and just crashes horribly into the moat.
Yeah, how you like that for lift?
So we again get this kind of weird mix of Wart sort of knows some things instinctively, but also the owl, who I keep wanting to call Nicodemus, and then nope, that's totally different movie.
What's
Archimedes.
Nicodemus from?
Well, I mean, other than the historical character, the Rats of Nim.
Oh, okay.
I think so. I think that's the head rat in Nim. But the Archimedes. So Arthur has kind of half understands how to fly on his own, but also still kind of needs some guidance by Archimedes.
Yeah, kinda.
And because, again, Merlin can't seem to transform Arthur or Wart, I know I've been switching back and forth, into
they're
anything.
The same being, yeah.
Anything that's not a prey animal. They are quickly hunted by, looks like a hawk, I believe.
Yeah, hawk or eagle or something.
And this is our transition into the final-ish segment of the film, where Wart, in the attempt to escape the predator bird, the raptor, flies into the smokestack of a hutch in the deep woods and ends up in the clutches of my favorite character. I think that goes unsaid, just probably everybody's favorite character from this film.
You mean the interesting character?
Yeah, the one most interesting that they've done the least with. Mad Madam Mim. I love Mad Madam Mim. I'm just smiling just thinking about her.
Yeah, I don't think she's in the original stories. I think they replaced Morgana with her.
Morgana, I think, is certainly the closest to whatever Mad Madam Mim is supposed to be based on. But yes, sadly, there is no public domain version of Mad Madam Mim, because I used the heck out of her and anything I could.
Yeah, she's fun.
Yeah, she is a witch practicing the less scrupulous forms of magic, which is interesting because I think on the Wikipedia entry they talk about Merlin's magic being science-based and hers being like evil or prank-based or something.
Yeah, they call it black magic.
Mm-hmm. And I'm like...
And that's an insult because the old dude who's taking care of Wart is like, Merlin, you practice black magic, and Merlin's like, what? Oh no, you don't.
And it's strange though, because in universe, I don't think we really ever see anything that would indicate that magic itself has any variations. It really does appear to come down to who's using it and their intent.
Yeah, it's more intent than actual scripture.
So I do think that that's an inappropriate way to be labeling how each one of them use. What if that neither of them is really using different magic, that just the statement of the type of magic you're describing them using is a at best unconscious judgment on how they're using it.
Yeah.
Granted, Mad Madam Mim does 100% intend to kill Wart, so
Yeah,
I
she
can't.
she makes her intentions very clear.
Yeah, Mad Madam Mim is someone who is 100% living her life who she is.
Living her truth.
Yes, she's living her truth. She's amazing. We see at this point, this is the most transformation heavy portion of the film, because first we get Mad Madam Mim in a delightful little ditty
Yeah.
describing both her emotional state and how her powers work in a sequence of, I would say, pretty well realized and animated transformation sequences.
Yes.
We get sort of a piggish creature. She starts out as, I guess, basically the default cartoon old crone sort of trope. Not the ugliest she can be, as she proves later,
Yeah,
but
the ugliest is just having a pig face.
yeah, but she also could, if she wanted to, transform herself into a ridiculously, this is certainly the most exaggerated Jessica Rabbit style
Oh yeah.
caricature, because she can make herself pretty, as she says, but it's one of those like weirdly over exaggerated ideas of pretty that even I, who traffics in exaggerated pretty, finds kind of like, I don't know, this is kind of a off-putting form you've put yourself in regards to the facial features you've basically erased in most cases, and the flatness of your overly curvy body.
Right. Yeah.
So she does her little bit to kind of try and impress upon Wart her capabilities, shifts back and forth between some forms, and as she decides she's going to dispose of Wart by, is she a cat at that point?
Yes.
Transforms herself into a cat to eat our Wart, who's still in his bird form, who Merlin could at any point transform back into a human being once he gets there, and remove several levels of danger from Wart's circumstances, but he doesn't. He just leaves him as a bird. We then have Merlin show up and is like, he's mine, you can't have him, and I think it's Mim who challenges them to the wizard's duel.
Yeah. Yeah, because she's the one who's like, yeah, you know what, we should just do this.
Mm-hmm. So they basically have a battle of transformations, and it's really great.
That's what they do. I I, I can't even really like weigh in on it because that's literally like, it is by its very definition. Like there's like it's a wizarding duel, and I think from what I understand, like they were a little loosey goosey in this interpretation, but like the way it's supposed to be is like you pick something, picks an animal to counter it, and then you only get like one chance to counter each thing until you like can't think of anything else.
It is sort of the, like, pick a word that begins with a letter and then go back and forth, and whoever comes up with like the second, like, repeats a word, basically is supposed to be the one who's out.
Yeah,
But
it's like that. But what if those words could kill each other?
yeah. And I do like in the beginning of it where Mad Madam Mim is like, I'm going to set some ground rules, and Archimedes is like, what is the point? You're just doing this so that you can break them.
Yeah.
And she does, because she's like, no, nothing imaginary, no pink dragons. And she turns later into like a blue dragon and is like, well, I said no pink dragons. I could turn into a blue dragon. That's not breaking the rules.
Obviously, pink dragons don't exist, but I am a blue dragon, which clearly exists.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's like, I forget the rules that she sets, but she breaks every one of them.
And we go back and forth. I think we've got mouse, rhinoceros, I think an alligator, turtle, yeah,
elephant.
yes, which I love, by the way. Again, if we're going by the form dictates the instincts, I love that Merlin's answer to Mim turning into an elephant is to turn into a mouse.
Yeah.
And I'm like, so either Mad Madam Mim is legitimately afraid of mice, or the incorrect assumption that elephants are afraid of mice is a real instinct that overwhelms her at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, they go back and forth, and eventually she turns a bird and a worm, and
She turns into a
eventually
snake.
there is a snake. Yes.
And she turns into a snake because he turned into like a rodent.
Yeah, there is a point where he turns into like I think like a raccoon, or at least a raccoon-sized rodent, and she turns into a snake. Like there's one answer that she has to something he's turned into where I'm kind of like I still feel like he has the advantage here. Like you haven't really, you didn't really counteract it so much as you just became a different thing, and Merlin freaked out, and I don't know why. Ultimately,
Yeah.
though, she turns into the dragon and catches, I think, Mouse again, Merlin in her hand. And this is really the only time that Merlin uses his scientific knowledge to any real functional degree.
Yes. And it weirds me out, but go ahead.
Oh, it weirds me out too because he turns into a germ, which again, during this time period, germs are not a thing.
Yeah,
Nobody,
they weren't going to be categorized for another 1,000 or so years.
yeah, like the idea of a germ could not even begin to enter the concept of any of the other characters in the scene outside of maybe Archimedes if Merlin's told him about it before. And so Merlin transforms into a germ, and you can kind of hear this voiceover, which I'm going to pretend is him. That he, since he has essentially gone inside of Mim's body as a germ, she is hearing him sort of resonate through her as he speaks in his germ form, which again
Yeah.
we never see. We're this entire sequence is entirely from the perspective of Mim, basically.
Yeah, because he's microscopic.
Yeah, turns into a germ, talks about how he's spreading through her body, and she gets spots and I think chills or heat waves or something, like all of these side effects that she's going to feel of him being a germ. And we do a nice tidy crossfade to her in bed, defeated with the impact of this illness on her. And it's never really addressed that if Merlin transforms into a germ and then self replicates.
Yeah, infects her. He words it as "I've infected you,"
Mm-hmm.
which means yeah that he has spread and is attacking her body.
Yeah. So effective, but super creepy. And again, this is specifically a duel intended to kill each other, so I don't know how much I can morally object to Merlin's choice of how to go about it here. It's creepy as it is.
Do you think multiple single cell organisms of himself retain the same sentience?
That is the part that I just cannot sleep over some nights. Like, yeah, are there now in the worst version of like the Big Brother from 1984 idea where now she has thousands of little Merlins basically silently watching her inside of her?
Potentially. Like, and the fact that like the onset of symptoms is so quick, like he's extremely virulent. Like incubation periods were basically like 5 seconds.
Yeah, like
He's the most deadly pathogen to to date. And I say this during a pandemic.
yeah.
One of the most deadly pathogens we know.
I mean, granted, they hadn't had the plague yet, so
Bubonic? Yeah, that hadn't happened yet.
yeah. So who knows? I mean, maybe this is actually. Oh God, what if Merlin's the plague?
Oh no.
I mean, I don't remember spots being part of the plague, but
Yeah.
if he was a virus, I mean, all he says is he's a germ, and I think germ is a
I
pretty
lost you.
generic form that I think could apply to either virus or bacteria.
I think bubonic is a bacteria.
That yes, I know bubonic is a bacteria. I'm just saying that we don't really know which one Merlin could be. If it's
He
bubonic,
says
he
he's a
could have
germ,
mutated.
which would be a bacteria.
Oh, is that specifically bacteria?
It's what's generally kind of
Okay.
what's the term? Uh, Coincided. There's where basically they're always associated.
Okay. So for me, I'm having literally like a 5-year-old's version of like I'm sick, I've got germs, which
Yeah,
for a 5-year-old means whatever. It doesn't. It could be whatever.
anything. Yeah,
Yeah,
it could
like
be a
that's
parasite.
that's my definition of a germ. But Merlin being the scientist, I will default to the more medically informed individual as regards to that. Um, but I did in my mind though. I definitely was seeing little virus Merlin with
With a
his
little
little
beard.
the little hexagonal top to him with the little beard floating down.
His
Um,
mitochondria got to be crazy strong.
anyway, so that ends the wizarding battle of him infecting Mim in the creepiest possible illness ever designed,
Hmm.
and basically leaving her with sunlight and tea to recover as they meander on back to the castle.
And she hates sunlight because she's such a bad person.
Such a generic thing to make like the evil like character just hate. It's like the I hate all the bad things are good and I love them and sunlight's icky. Like I mean, this is a character who doesn't have like a weakness to sunlight. It's not like she's a vampire and she's gonna burn up from this. It's
She
just
just
a
doesn't like it.
yeah, she just doesn't like it. I'm like okay. I mean, you can be evil or morally horrible and be good with sunlight. Like it's not
You
you
could
don't.
also be me, and I don't like sunlight.
Mm-hmm. I'm
Mostly because
happy.
it hurts.
Well, I mean, I'm happy to live out here in Cleveland, where most of the time it's cloud cover. I'm perfectly good with that. But regardless,
Yeah, that's
uh,
her fate. She
yeah,
gets sick. Uh, Merlin gives her a pox, and not in the way you expected.
and that's the end. And the cause process impact here is a little bit odd. In regards to Wart transforming into the bird, I do kind of find it funny that it's a be careful what you wish for sort of thing. It's not cool that Merlin does it without asking him. And then with and then again it's just a crossfade process for him, and then the impact should again in theory be another moral lesson, but Merlin just
Yeah,
kind of does it impulsively with no real greater theory, honestly.
yeah. Because the real morals are that he can see that there are no actual boundaries. Like, that's the whole point.
Hmm.
But
Oh
we
yeah,
don't
that's
get
right.
any of that because Madam Mim's got to get in there, which,
Hmm.
good reason.
Hmm. Yeah, and so cross process impact for Madam Mim is just a fantastic bit of, you know, wizard's got a wizard, witch has got a
And
witch.
and she has a
Uh,
good time doing it.
mm-hmm. And then process, I think we got a lot of good. There's some like poof transformations. There's some that happen off screen, but for the most part, there's some great sequences of transformation that happen in the animation here, and about to cross both Merlin and Mad Madam Mim, and
Yeah,
the impact. Oop, go ahead.
I would say they follow a lot of the rules of animation. There's lots of good springing. There's lots of good, like overstretching and all that good stuff. Like it when it comes to like cartoon animation, they did a good job.
I agree. I also want to point out that's something that just occurred to me when you mentioned that is they also follow the rules of magically increasing mass, where even if you are inside of a log or under the ground, where a part of the body increasing in size against such heavy inanimate objects should honestly make your fleshy interior burst.
Right.
You of course during that transformation are invulnerable and burst out of the ground and tree trunks and all that without any issue.
Yeah. Explode the log.
Uh huh. There's something we got to work into. It's like that part of that kind of scene in future movies. Oh, they exploded the log when their bosom expanded and the bra that's clearly very well made shattered, even though it would have caused the worst. You know,
Yeah. We are not meant to withstand the kind of pressure that
no,
would be.
we are fleshy, weak meat bags, and we should never forget that.
The bones are like some of the strongest bits of us, and even they aren't that strong.
No, but they're stronger than what's surrounding them. So if bone is expanding and muscle and flesh does not have the space to be doing so, bone gonna bone, like like that is a horrible way to die that I don't even want to think about too much.
Yeah, I think it'd be hard to render.
that is sort of the transporter accident of Star Trek the film, I
Oh
want to
my
say.
god. I haven't thought about the film.
You
Like the
know,
motion picture, like the first one?
yeah, the original motion picture where
Yeah.
the best line, and by the best I mean horrible, is when the transporter malfunctions. They come back. They start to form sort of half inside out. They send them back, and the response from Earth when the transported people show up on their side was, "They didn't live long, thank goodness."
Oh my god.
Yeah, something to that effect. And if you want to see it really, really, really horribly, which I have somewhere, pick up the Marvel comic adaptation of the film, which gives you a much better look at how that went super, super bad.
Man, we've been a really distracted episode today.
It's a short movie. Like, there's not much going on in here. It's far better than Wish Me Luck, so I want to make sure that the audience doesn't think that our distracted non sequiturs is any comment on the quality of the film. I think it's a
Yeah,
pretty good movie.
that's fair.
But
At no point during this film did I sit there and go, man, I really should stop watching this.
yeah, I mean, there was no point where I got to the end of it and I was like, Ford owes me an apology for this.
I kind of owe myself an apology, though, just because, like, yeah, after the Madam Mim scene, it's like, all right, well, we gotta go do the tournament in order to see who's gonna be king, because no one's pulled that dang old sword out of that dingle dangle stone.
And Merlin kind of comes up with the worst reason to cause that late third act, in this case, a schism between our protagonists, where he's like, the squire that was supposed to be going with Kay to the joust ends up sick. Hopefully, he wasn't in the presence of Madam Mim recently.
didn't didn't get the Merlin fever.
Yeah, and he ends up sick, and so Wart, who had been previously told he wasn't going to be allowed to go to London for the tournament, now has to go in order to support Kay, and goes excitedly to tell Merlin, "Hey, I'm going to go do
I'm
this
gonna be a
thing.
squire.
Yeah, I'm going to go finally realize my life's goals." Which, for someone in his place in the medieval world, that really is the best he can hope for. Like, it isn't like this whole time Merlin has been telling him, like, oh, you're going to be, there are so many more options for you outside of your place. Like, it doesn't really matter how much Merlin teaches Wart about science or morals or gravity or whatever. Even Archimedes is like, what is this kid going to do with this information? Like,
He's
you
gonna go
tell
to a community college, maybe learn a trade,
mm-hmm.
like dishwashing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, particularly for that time period, that's work. That's got you a place in that castle. That's food and shelter.
Yeah,
Like, I mean, I don't. Manual labor is hard, and people should get what they are duly deserve for hard manual labor. Let me tell you, if it was a job that didn't need to be done, we wouldn't have to pay people to do it.
that's
Like,
fair.
the fact that Merlin gets so upset about Wart being like, "Hey, I've moved up essentially in my one path in this medieval world. I'm
Yeah,
lucky. I'm lucky that at 13 or whatever he is, he hasn't been forced to marry yet." He Merlin's like, you're just like the rest of them, glorifying violence, whatever. Blast me to Bermuda. And again, as you mentioned, Merlin seems to have no real control over his magic, and looks the most wonderfully perplexed as he rockets out of there to Bermuda.
yeah, that was weird.
It's almost like, did you ever watch? Oh god, I'm gonna not suck a tourist again. Did you ever watch the Beetlejuice cartoon?
Yeah, way back. I haven't seen it since.
So, first of all, if anybody wants to see what I absolutely believe is one of the greatest opening sequences to a cartoon show, go.
Oh,
There's a high definition version of the Beetlejuice cartoon opening theme on YouTube. Go watch that with like headphones in, full bass. Like, it's a fantastic opening sequence.
yeah, they really did a good job with that, despite the fact it's a cartoon for not a kid's movie.
Yeah, no. As far as like an inappropriate thing to adapt to a cartoon, I mean, it's not RoboCop.
Yeah, I was about ready to bring up RoboCop.
It's
Yeah,
not
that was a
Rambo. and Forces of Freedom or whatever that was. You know, at least it was a PG-13, I want to say, film. But
He does drop the F-bomb once.
does he?
Yeah.
I don't remember him.
Yeah, because it's right like near the middle when they like turn him
Oh,
down and he says, "Oh, nice fucking model."
yeah, and he grabs his crotch. Yeah, that's right.
Yep, Hong Kong.
Hong Kong. Yep, you're right. Good old PG-13.
I love that movie.
Oh, it's a fantastic movie. And again, consent, people, always important. But the cartoon is fantastic. Anyway, they establish in the cartoon that when Beetlejuice is in the Netherworld, any like analogy or metaphor or any like anything he says that's a oh
Like
crap.
euphemism.
Thank you. Anything he says is a euphemism. He's forced to physically then like manifest. Like he has to do it to basically show the joke, the pun.
It's
But
the
it's like
rule.
it's an in-world rule. Like the characters and Beetlejuice himself are aware of it, and there is an episode where one of the characters who hates Beetlejuice realizes that if they can trick him into saying, "I fell to pieces," they could steal his body parts and separate him far enough apart that he wouldn't be able to put himself back together.
That's a dastardly plot.
It is. And the only reason I bring this up at all, though, is it's such a weird thing where it's like it's a subconscious thing that his magic just does, and that's what this reminded me here with Merlin, where it's just a thing he's not intending to do it, but he just has such a strong feeling about it when he goes blast me to Bermuda that even against his own conscious wishes he rockets out of the movie for a few minutes.
Now that I think about it, it might be an incantation.
Blast me to Bermuda.
Because like all of his other spells work off of like incantations. So like when he's packing up his stuff, he's doing the song and he has to know his place in order for it to work out. And maybe Blast Me to Bermuda is an incredibly powerful short spell that he just forgot is actually a spell, and then he just gets bottle rocketed to another hemisphere.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that could be the case. There's a lot of alliteration and stuff in what he's singing earlier, and "Blast Me to Bermuda" certainly has a interrupted alliteration there. So
Yeah. So maybe it's that, but either way, he just yeah.
he just leaves the film for a short period of time,
He
and
egresses.
yeah, they go to the tournament. Wart forgets to bring a sword because he's the worst squire,
Yeah, he
and
hasn't been doing it for very long.
no, he's kind of fallen out of practice at best. And
If they needed a squirrel,
yeah, a squirrel. He's all over that. I
he's got the
do.
animal magnetism.
Oh no. Um, I do like the fact though when he goes back to the inn to get the sword, it's all closed and locked because of course everybody is at the tournament to see who's going to become the new king of England. Like it's one of those things that I would expect though to also be like the plot point of like like a National Lampoon Vacation film where Chevy Chase has got to get something out of his room, forgets his key. There's no person at the front desk because there's some sort of big, event going on, and so then the rest of the film is him trying to like sneak into the room.
Yeah, and then accidentally becoming king of Nevada or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what happens here, where like Wart needs to get back into the stable or wherever the hotel or whatever it is that they're at. That the sword is in. He can't get in because nobody's there. And
What an interesting place to keep your stuff, like in the inn, not like in your carriage.
that's the thing where I'm like, did he just like put down the sword like in a different corner? Like, why is it not with everything else? Like,
Yeah, you think it'd be with the armor and stuff.
yeah, like yeah, again, plot contrivances
Yeah.
is not.
Point is,
Yeah,
he forgot the sword.
he needs a sword.
He can't get back into the inn because they locked up to go to the tournament.
Right. He's just gonna have to go have his child in the manger, and that's it's just the way Christianity happened, right?
That's nature.
Yeah. So he looks across the street basically, and and the sword in the stone, in this dilapidated like looks like cemetery. I think people have been
Yeah.
buried around it.
Yeah, it's got like the wrought iron fence and like the old cobbles, and there's like a bunch of like ivy growing on it.
Yeah. And so, like any 12-year-old, would, and this I believe, this is the most believable part of the movie. Like any 12-year-old would, he looks at an art piece that has a sword in it and says to himself, "Oh, that's definitely a real sword."
Is this sword real? It looks crazy real. Are you sure it's not like a statue of a sword for like a dead guy? No, I'm gonna take this sword though.
It's 100% real sword.
This is not a monument. It is a real sword. Mm-hmm. In the real stone.
Jumps up upon said stone, and we get our little light coming down.
Choir. That
Yeah.
is diegetic.
The heaven. I don't know what diegetic means.
It means that they can hear it in the universe as opposed to only the audience hearing it.
All right, thank you. Yes, yes. The Archimedes and Wart are very much aware of this heavenly choir singing as the light casts down. And Archimedes, being the wise owl he is like, maybe we shouldn't touch that.
Don't want to piss off God today. You've already
Yeah.
pissed off your friends.
Yeah, like the two characters who both most should know this fairy tale and or thing that your friend slash caretaker is intimately involved in should know what this story is, or at least know what this thing is, because you're a dumb kid and an owl.
Yeah, Merlin never gave him a heads up, which is staggering.
They do try so hard though at the beginning to be like, I know somebody important is coming, but I don't know why they're important for Merlin. Like, they really try hard to hammer that narrative, that exposition when he's like preparing the chair for Wart to fall through the ceiling. He's like, I've told you, I know someone important is going to come. He's going to come right about now. I don't know why he's important. I just know that it's going to be my job to help him, improve himself.
Yeah.
Like,
so it's my duty. Get off my case, bird.
My self-appointed duty. Don't question it. So,
ordained by not God, but science.
Or, this weird... Who is this this white fellow? Like, what is his book doing on my thing? I should get around to reading that at some point. Anyway, long story short, he pulls the sword. He goes to the tournament. Thankfully, he is surrounded by the most honest number of, reprobate knight wannabe kings. And honestly, so this is the point I'm going to stop, because there are two actors in this film that we haven't really given credit so far to. One is only in the last literally like 8 minutes of the film appearing. But the other one is the voice of Sir Ector, the father of Sir Kay. I do want to take a minute and be like, I might be mispronouncing his name. I don't know. I don't remember if the T is silent or not. But Sebastian Cabot?
I don't know who that is.
That he is probably most famous for, if you're like myself and watched a lot of reruns, he is Mr. French from Family Affair. And you either know what that is or you don't, and there's no way I can do anything about it. Either way.
Unfortunately, that's one of those ones I don't.
Okay. He is someone who's somebody out there, probably older than me. Yeah, knows who I'm talking about. But he is Mr. French from Family Affair, and a whole bunch of other... He's like the narrator. He was the narrator of pretty much every Winnie the Pooh movie until the late 70s.
Oh, okay.
He's been in a bunch of stuff. But the other voice that now pops up here, and honestly adds a lot of gravitas to what could really be a situation that goes really bad really fast for Arthur. It is really I've found the golden ticket. Thank God the first person who saw me with the golden ticket gave me the credit and let me keep the golden ticket, because you could have easily swiped it from me.
Yeah.
Thurl Ravenscroft pops up at this point in the movie. And you may not know that name, but you know him from two things.
Okay.
I can quote him for one of them. They're great!
What?
He is the voice of Tony the Tiger.
Okay.
He is also, though, the singing voice for You're a Mean One, Mr. Grinch from the original Grinch animated special.
Okay, so this is the part where I'm going to give you some perspective. I literally did not look up any of the voice actors from this movie because I didn't think I'd know any of them.
Hmm.
But you are just telling me now that that the singing voice of Mr. Grinch is also Tony the Tiger, and that's blowing my mind right now.
Yes, Bela Lugosi did not sing "You're a Mean One, Mr. Grinch" in the animated Chuck Jones "How the Grinch Stole Christmas" movie. It is, in fact, the guy who voiced Tony the Tiger.
So Bela Lugosi was the narrator.
Yes, Bela Lugosi in the "How the Grinch Stole Christmas" is the narrator and the voice of the Grinch when he
Okay.
speaks in the original animated movie,
Hmm.
and the voice singer for "You're a Mean One, Mr. Grinch," the same version that's in like Home Alone, that is Thurl Ravenscroft, the voice of Tony the Tiger. Also, I Am Weasel from I Am Weasel.
What?
The vacuum cleaner from The Brave Little Toaster. Uh, a bunch of stuff. This is a guy who would wander into a movie or a television show, like voice three or four random characters, never get any credit for it, and just take his money and go. Like,
I mean, that sounds like perfect.
yeah,
That's a position I want to be in.
yeah.
It's
He,
like you just, I am Weasel, really?
mm-hmm.
Damn.
Yeah. Oh wait, he was just the singing voice.
No, I can believe it
Mm-hmm.
because I know that IR Baboon alongside him is voiced by the same guy who's Lieutenant Worf.
Who was Lieutenant Worf? Hold on, maybe I'm just remembering
Wait,
who.
hang
That's
on.
Charlie
Lieutenant Worf
Adler.
is his singing is his speaking
Yes,
voice.
I'm sorry. Michael Dorn is the speaking voice. Thurl Ravenscroft is the singing voice of I Am
Yeah,
Weasel.
that's crazy.
Yeah, and Charlie Adler, of course, voice of my childhood as IR Baboon. Um, I'm not even going to begin to open up the Charlie Adler can of worms because
So so
anyway, Thurl
yeah.
Ravenscroft's got a very great voice, and he pops up at this point in the movie as the guy who's like, "Hey, maybe we should find out where the hell this sword came from."
Yeah, it's got all these inscriptions in it. Maybe this kid is king.
Mm-hmm. So they take him and the sword back to the stone. This is actually my favorite, and I can't fault Kay for this line of thinking. It makes sense where he's like, "Well, anybody can, like they're like." Wart, put the sword back in. He puts the sword back in. All right, Wart, take the sword back out. Wart takes the sword back out, and Kay, voice of reason for the first time in the whole movie, goes, "Well, anybody can take a sword out if you've already done it once."
Right.
So they put the sword back. Of course, nobody else can pull it, and then Wart pulls it again to the same, as you said, extant chanting from heaven.
Yeah, the choir
Mm-hmm.
and
And
the heavenly light gets oh so brighter. And
mm-hmm.
they're like, "Oh, this has got to be some divine mess for sure."
Yeah, it's so good that these, I don't know, 20 or so guys that happen to be here at this exact moment can vouch for the rest of England that the 12-year-old who's had no military experience in a land, as you've said, that's being, invaded every other Tuesday, uh, is totes the King of England now.
And
And
like, yeah, I kind of want to jump to right at the very end where like he kind of shows he's not set for the job.
oh yeah, Wart knows that he is well unprepared for this, and literally anybody else would be a better choice at this particular moment in time.
So, can I ask why they didn't make him new clothes, especially given the gap between monarchy that they like kept all the old stuff and put it on him?
I'm going to say maybe he did that to keep himself humbled.
Maybe.
Also, see that this has only had a $3 million budget, so
But
granted
like they didn't buy the clothing for the boy.
that requires an entirely new character model. They got
They
they've
drew his clothes too big. And
oh
like
oh I see what you mean. I thought that I recalled him still wearing his like peasant clothing, but you're right. He's in this cartoonishly oversized like robe and
and
outfit.
crown, like everything's
Yeah.
too big. And I'm like, why they couldn't just make him a new one? You'd think it'd be so dang excited for a new king.
Okay, but let's also put it this way: England has not had a king for long enough for people to forget about the sword and the stone. There's probably nobody who's been organized or at least been able to agree on who should collect taxes. there
The
might not
average
be
life
yet.
expectancy is like 30 years. It could have been 50 years.
And that's a 50-year period of nobody agreeing on who has the right to collect taxes. There's no money for them to, like, as far as they're concerned, the most cost-effective thing to do is just to wait for them to grow into it.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, they do grow really fast in their teens. So fast that their voice changes halfway through the movie intermittently.
Yeah, as you said, we hadn't talked too much about actors in this film. I've had my two picks, but that is an interesting fact
Did you
about
notice
this.
that?
I never noticed that. I will 100% tell you, I never noticed the change in the voice in the film. And in fact, I only learned the fact that there were three different actors playing Arthur after the fact, and haven't had a chance to go back and see if now knowing that I'd noticed
There's
it.
three? I picked up on two, and I thought it was just the same kid going like through puberty due to how long production took.
Believe it or not, the first two were a set of brothers who went through puberty. I think they were twins that ended up going through puberty simultaneously.
Um,
And then the others, and then the other one I think is the one who was brought in to finish off the dialogue. But it doesn't make any sense. They clearly did not record the dialogue in any particular order because it from what I understand, swings back and forth between them.
it does. It was kind of jarring because like it just happens every once in a while, and I was just kind of like, am I losing my mind? Because he didn't always sound like this. And it turns out I was right.
Yeah. And by the way, the twins who ended up aging out of the voice range, I believe, were the sons of the director.
That explains the acting.
A little bit of nepotism never hurt Disney. But regardless, Merlin shows up just in time, basically, to keep Wirt from abdicating the throne via sneaking out the back door.
Yeah, he tries, but everyone's there ready to like yell at him.
Mm-hmm.
And then Merlin bursts in through the window with like a pair of sunglasses and swim trunks on.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, oh yeah, Bermuda was baller. What's it like being king?
Huh, totally inappropriate and overwhelming for someone your age. Ah, yeah, that's right.
I hope it goes well. And then there's that bullshit line about like, I'm sure you'll love the round table, and he's like, round?
Yeah.
And it's like, that's not it. It wasn't Merlin's idea. It's because Arthur was smart and cool.
Yeah. And then it's not even that. Is that then Merlin says like, "Oh, would you prefer a different shape?" And I'm like, you've 100% missed the point of the round table, Merlin.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be mad at this movie for several moments in writing, but that's probably the one that irritates me the most.
I mean, it doesn't change the attitude that the film has had to the Arthurian legend this whole time. Again, it is really an excuse to make a bunch of sketches and skits inspired by the Arthurian legend, because as we've established, Merlin has multiple attempts to actually teach him something that could be truly recognizable as a lesson that would benefit a king that is supposed to be one of the greatest kings of England, the greatest king of England, and we never see it narratively fulfilled, and it is always punctuated with some sort of something that's humorous, not because the characters in universe should find it funny, but because we as the audience of a modern era looking at the situation project the appropriateness of the humor onto that circumstance. Nothing that happens to these characters in this film is within its own universe at that experience from a first person perspective funny.
Yeah.
I really dug deep down into a hole for that one.
I mean, as you should. It deserves getting just exhumed.
Despite all of that, I do think it's worth watching.
I would say it's a charming movie. Just don't get your hopes up.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to say now, the transformations are good when they come, but it is a children's cartoon, and
it is the very definition of a children's cartoon because of its cohesiveness and adherence to physical humor.
I think I certainly have a lot of nostalgia for this film. I cannot extricate that from my thoughts on it. and I know it's one of these films that I know I watched at an age where I took something from it that became a part of me, just from I know that watching that squirrel's heartbreak like affected how I look at like heartbreak,
Mm-hmm.
honestly. The same way that at that same age, like I was watching Popeye, even though I was expressly forbidden to. Apparently, that message never made it to my grandparents. Uh, and like my thoughts on like how to treat people, and if you treat people shittily, someone's gonna come beat the shit out of you. Like, and that's due. Like that is the appropriate response to that. Like I know that that's a thing that from that same time period and age and was internalized. So I can't extricate how very much this movie is a part of how I grew up without saying, well, I watched it and I feel like I got the appropriate things out of it. But that is very
I feel
much,
morally upstanding.
but that is 100% a singular item that I cannot say could be replicated or even applied to anybody else watching this film, whatever your age may be.
Yeah, I can see it being influential, but not actually very important.
Yeah, I could say that that's a fair way of describing it. If you're interested in this thing's place in transformation history, and certainly a way that it established a lot of Disney stuff from that point forward that would see repeated further on, it's worth a watch. Just be aware that it in many ways hasn't aged well, but
In many ways.
I think if you happen to have Disney Plus, you're already paying for a subscription. Definitely go ahead and kick it on and give it a go. I don't know if I necessarily think it's something like I've got it on DVD for the Transformium. I don't know how much I, as a nearly 40-year-old man, am going to rewatch this film.
I don't think I ever will. I mean, to be fair, before this podcast, I never would have.
Hmm.
So, now I'm doing it for fun. And I'll just say, it's a great way to kill an hour and a half. You can just watch it over a meal.
Yeah, I mean, I watched it during breakfast, so it's a quick viewing, and man, I lost what I was going to add to all that, but nah, I don't think you need to own this one.
Yeah, I agree.
So, oh, I know what I was going to say. It's still better than Wish Me Luck.
Yeah, most things are.
Again, a low bar to try and overcome, but we watched this to kind of, you know, refresh the palate from Wish Me Luck, and I
Yeah.
think it succeeded in that.
If I may, I've broken my nose, like shattered my nose. That's better than Wish Me Luck. That movie's terrible.
All right, good to know. I don't think I had understood it on that scale just yet.
Like, I don't say I'd go through it again, but I I don't ever want to see that movie again.
Oh no, I actually I was on a call with some friends the day after we recorded that episode, and was going, still shell shocked and kind of working through my shame of recommending it. And they were like, "Oh, I kind of want to see this movie now." I'm like, "No, I cannot. Not even as a lark. Like, do not." There's no grounds upon which I can bless the idea of anybody watching that movie.
It's so not good.
Yeah.
It's so not funny.
I realized that part of the reason we ended up in that circumstance is because of my sometimes misbegotten desire to expand the general knowledge of the transformation community by watching obscure films that I know very little about. And I know we've been burned once on that, but if I may, if we're at the what are we going to do next time portion of the episode, I may have a recommendation that I also haven't watched, but I'm pretty darn sure is not going to be a Wish Me Luck circumstance.
Okay. What you got?
So it's a French film.
Okay.
It is based on a short story from the 30s, and this film was made in 1957. So,
It's the
us,
unofficial sequel to Wedding Crashers.
yes, it's the Spanish DVD release of Wedding Crashers 2.
50 years prior.
50 years prior, made to Wedding Crashers 2. No, it is. The French title is Amour de Poche. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. But it is, in America, it was released as Girl in His Pocket. It is, I think, a lesser known movie that involves both shrinking and inanimate transformation.
All right.
And again, attempting to not have a Wish Me Luck repeat, I did kind of jump through the film just to make sure the DVD worked when it got here. And it gives off to me a sort of like 1950s, 40s screwball comedy like sort of feel to it.
All
So
right.
I think I don't think I really doubt that I will be apologizing to you for making us watch it at the end of all of this. Again, it's from 1957 with a 1960s American dub, so who knows what crazy stuff they're gonna say in it. But
Oh, I'm so down for that.
yeah, but that's gonna be my recommendation for the next episode: Girl in His Pocket.
All right. I look forward to it.
Okay. Now, I've jumped over the personal projects portion of this episode, not to completely ignore it, because I do want to give you your opportunity to talk about what you're doing. But part of that is because, given that Sword in the Stone is definitely a children's film, and I didn't want to, I don't feel appropriate on this particular podcast, in case someone randomly Googles and listens to this episode, to recommend my usual fare
Did you miss
that I work
the
on.
intro? We said stuff in the intro.
It's been a long day. I've already forgotten what we've done like 2 hours ago.
It's surprisingly a Wednesday.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But yeah, at the very beginning we talked about what we did. So
Well, I'm not gonna get any more explicit than that. Google me.
that is the podcast equivalent of taking off your sunglasses and saying, "Don't you know who I am?"
Well, sadly, for anybody else with my name, I am the first thing that comes up.
Oh boy.
So if your name is also Dan Standing and you're trying to, I don't know, be a dentist or, write anything else on the internet, I'm sorry, but it appears that I got here first. So
You've done to the Standing name
yeah,
what? Yeah, I was gonna make a comparison, but it's literally not that bad.
no. So I'm not trying to sound like a pompous ass when I say I'm the first result if you Google my name.
That's good branding.
It's more of a I'm so sorry to everybody who's, you know, also trying to just be online and happen to have my name. I really am so sorry. That is like, you'll never believe what comes up if you put in a name and wait 12 seconds. Like, ads did not expect to be dealing with me. So, anyway, you're, however, I understand, doing far more important work.
Yes, I am going to be streaming every Saturday from 7 to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to raise money for Black Lives Matter movements and Black Trans Lives Matters, including the Okra Project, which is a organization that helps get food and food resources to underprivileged people, particularly people of color. And there's also I really should know the name of it. I think the Black Trans Travel Fund. Thank you, Jinx, for screaming that from downstairs. The Black Trans Travel Fund is a fund that helps give mobility freedom to people who don't have enough money to leave a terrible circumstance. So that doesn't necessarily mean they're going on vacation. It's more like the cost of renting an apartment, down payment, moving trucks, all that stuff. They help get that money together to help people get into better living circumstances. So we're raising money for that. That is on twitch.tv/NYMgamer_hijinks HIJYNX.
I hope that people are able to tune in, and sadly, I still have just not been quite where I need to be to tune in, but I'm looking forward to doing that and helping if I can. And Black Lives Matter, and we should all be doing what we can in regards to all that. So thanks for taking up that.
Yeah, no problem.
And I think because we already said that Girl in His Pocket is next, and we hopefully have not had a repeat of the last time I picked the movie without fully watching it, I think I don't really have any further final thoughts on The Sword in the Stone.
Um, yeah, I think if I ever were gonna watch it again, it'd be like in a long string, not for the content, but just to see what all is copied.
I can see that. I think
Yeah.
I don't know if we're going to do another animated Disney film anytime soon, or at least one that would be covered by this. So
Let's keep ourselves off the Disney radar for a bit. I'm sure they're feeling rather litigious.
I mean, Maleficent is definitely on my list for us to do at some point. So we will be coming back to the Disney corner in some form. But no, I think we're good in regards to that aspect. But yeah, I would say Mad Madam Mim is certainly, worth watching. She's in such a small portion at the end of the film that you can certainly just skip to her and get the full Mad Madam Mim experience, and then go read a Uncle Scrooge Disney Adventures comic or something, because that's like the only other thing they ever did with her, and I do not understand why. He already had Magica Dispel that could have done so much more with Mad Madam Mim, and she's been in almost nothing else.
Yeah, it's really a lot of waste. I remember all the Discord conversations that you were having, just like I can't believe that she's only in it for like 10 minutes.
Yeah, she's easily
She's
one
not
of
even in Kingdom Hearts. This sucks.
yeah. Again, I remember I had a Disney Adventures subscription, and there were these random Scrooge McDuck comics in there where she like teamed up with the Beagle Boys, like not even with Magica Dispel. It wasn't like two powerful like female villains coming together to like team up and take down Scrooge. Like no, it's like okay, well we don't know what to do with her. Let's have her team up with the Beagle Boys for no real reason, and like blow up the Sphinx or whatever the story was that I read at the time. Like such an underutilized thing. Disney, I'm calling you out. Be better. Be better to Mim. Do it. Where's our Mad Madam Mim origin movie? You're gonna run out of things to tell with Maleficent eventually.
I'm sure they can squeeze 2 more movies out of Angelina Jolie.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm not gonna object to that. Whatever. Maleficent's fine. But there's once this whole thing, he says, waving his hand around in a circle in the air like he's shouting
He
at clouds.
gesticulates madly.
Yes, once this whole thing is done, get us our Mad Madam Mim gritty reboot or whatever. I don't care. Just do it.
Starring Charlize Theron.
Fine. I would be 100% down with that. Whatever. You can multicast people. Pick different people to be the different versions of Mim throughout the film. It'll be great. Well, it's halfway written.
Benedict Cumberbatch and all those other fun people.
Yeah. It's like we could even do that now. Just have everybody fill in front of their Zooms and choose different things. Fine. There's a horror movie that did it. It's fine. It's doable. Disney, come on. I got a Disney Plus subscription that I've been paying for the last few months. I haven't used since Mandalorian stopped. Come on. Didn't even use it to watch this movie. I have the stupid DVD that I played and watched.
I love inane hills to die on.
Let's get out of here before I do anything worse.
Yeah. If you feel particularly bothered by any particular deficiency of Madam Mim, you're free to reach us on our email, modmetapodcast@gmail.com.
That's how angry I am. I didn't even see the email. Ah! Commiserate with me, yes, at modmetapodcast@gmail.com in regards to our need for a Mad Madam Mim origin film, or at least if you're Disney, email me and I'll help.
Yes, and it's also a good email for contacting us about getting a shout out on our program at a fair rate. If you have any collaborations you'd like to do, if you're interested in talking to us on our podcast, then go ahead and reach out to us.
And I swear, if you do a guest episode with us, I will not force you to give me your opinion on Mad Madam Mim. I said that as calmly as I possibly could.
That sounded so just ominous.
Anyway, until then, I'm the first result in Google. I mean, until then, I've been Dan Standing.
And I'm Alex Fort, one of 16 in the United States contiguous.
And the responsible one on today's podcast. Thank you, Mr. Fort, and thank you all at home for listening.
Thank you, first result on Google.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Do you want to count?
Sure, yeah, I'll do it.
Okay.
1, 2, 3.
Ooh, that was extremely well timed. Nice.
Yeah.
Yay. Okay, so I'm gonna stop talking, give myself 5 seconds, and then do the thing.